welcome to the Passenger Seat Podcast, a podcast designed to fill your passenger seat with chat about classic cars, all recorded from my 1968 Morris Minor Peggy. I'm Becca, and today I'm going to be telling you all about the Singer Owners Club weekend and how the club went about celebrating their 75th anniversary. A real great milestone for a car club to get to, and just shows how passionate people who are behind some of these cars are about keeping these resources, support networks available for all cars that bear the Singer name. Now, this year's national weekend was based kind of down in Milton Keynes area and also Shuttleworth being the Sunday event, so not too far for us, but it doesn't usually matter. We're pretty happy to put the miles in for a Singer Owners Club weekend. Last year it was obviously up in kind of Durham, and the year before that it was over towards Chester. And the way that the Singer Owners Club does it is that different members take on a big book that gives all the details on how you go about planning a national weekend, and they then go about planning the national weekend with support of the committee. And this year I think it was actually primarily planned by somebody on the committee, Simon Warland, the secretary, and it was a all-round very good weekend. So last year we took Jaffa, the Reliant Scimitar, up to Durham. So this year it was Peggy's turn, and we had her all nice and ready and clean, loaded up, and on the Friday we headed down to kind of Brampton services and met up with my parents, who were in my dad's 1931 Singer Junior and the 1967 Singer Chamois Coupe that they've got. So they were in two cars, we were in Peggy, and then we proceeded to kind of convoy our way down the A1 and then across the A428, I think it is, towards Milton Keynes, where we were staying in a hotel. And it's always such fun to turn up to a hotel and see the car park full of singers, and recognising some of those cars from previous years, knowing that people that you're friends with and you love having chats with and that are there, so that's always great fun. We got ourselves checked in, unloaded the cars, and then headed off to the afternoon activity, which was at Curie Batelli, which is a Aston Martin restoration specialist that was started, I believe, by someone from Pink Floyd, and has since kind of gone on to become one of the best well-known Aston Martin specialists in restoring some of those really early Aston Martins and preparing Aston Martins for racing or touring and things like that. And it was a really fantastic place to get access to. They were so welcoming, happy to answer as many questions as people had. We got kind of shown around their showroom of cars that are currently for sale, as well as the projects that are currently ongoing in the workshop, what was being done to them, what still needed to be done, and when the owners were kind of expecting them back, and what sort of things the owners typically did with them. There was a car that was raced by two women pretty regularly that was in for a bit of work between its races, and then there was also this saloon car that had been the same family for its entire existence, and they believe that it's the only one that is a two-door saloon in the style that it was. And it was having a huge restoration in the hope that the lady that had remembered going on holidays in it as a young child around Europe was able to have another holiday in it in the way that she remembered it as a child. And it was absolutely gorgeous, and the workmanship that was going into everything that was there was brilliant, and such a great opportunity to go around and have a look at the stuff that goes into keeping these beautiful vehicles on the road. And of course, Aston Martin ended up being a bit of a theme to the weekend, given the location that we were in and the link between Aston Martin and Singer, which, for those of you who don't know, is that Aston Martin started off by essentially tuning up and improving a 10 horsepower Singer, and using that on the Aston Hill climbs, and then going from there into obviously developing their own cars. But that link is something that many Singer owners speak of to this day, and was something that ended up coming up again later in the weekend, as I'll get on to. So that was kind of Friday. During the day, we did stop off briefly at the village of Olney as we were travelling through. Had a little wander around there, absolutely gorgeous, and had some really well-stocked charity shops that my dad actually managed to find an original, very early Singer Owners Club buttonhole. Totally unexpected, and to find it on a Singer Owners Club weekend in a place that you've just randomly stopped off on your way back to the hotel was quite a bit of luck, and he was proudly showing it to as many people as he could over the weekend. I didn't find quite so much useful stuff for myself in the shops, but there was this amazing little kind of ironmonger shop that had a bit of everything in it, that kept going on for absolutely ever, and it seemed like you were kind of walking between houses that had been vaguely knocked through as you were exploring around it. And we managed to come out with a bit of a useful trivet for our kitchen, as you might have seen found in my boot in a previous podcast. Then we headed back to the hotel, and more people had started to arrive or come back from their day's activities, and it was great to start catching up with lots of people, that some of which we hadn't seen in a really long time actually, but really great turnout. We then went back to our room to get sorted for a bit. I went to the club's AGM, which they host on the Friday of National Weekend, as a good way to kind of get as many people going along to it as possible, seeing as they tend to be there already. And then went into dinner and made use of the hotel's gym, at which point my dad came into the gym and said, "Have you got a torque wrench?" Which again feeds nicely into why we were cleaning out my boot last week on the podcast. Unfortunately, as you might have seen, I did not indeed have a torque wrench, but we did manage to help the gentleman who was having some issues with a bit of bubbling from his head gasket by using finger tight, and really tight, or 2 fingers and 3 fingers in terms of the strength that was required to tighten it off, and that seemed to solve his problem well enough to at least carry on with the rest of the weekend. Following day, it was an option of kind of 3 things that you could do, or you could kind of do a bit of a road run around the area between them. So we kind of ended up doing a bit of a road run between all of the options, starting off heading towards the Milton Keynes Museum, driving from there to Stowe Gardens, and then my sister, who had a kind of a delayed arrival because she'd been a friend's wedding on the Thursday and was kind of getting her way back from that, was ready to meet up with us. So we headed kind of towards Bletchley Park, which was the 3rd option of a place to go that day, and I believe had a fantastic little 40s weekend on, but ended up at a very nice little farm shop, having a bit of a tea and coffee and things there before we headed on the rest of the road run back to the hotel. And I think we got back to the hotel around 3 o'clock, which was just about right because we were there to help set up for the Saturday night meal. If you've seen our Singer Owners Club weekends before, you know that they have kind of a big meal on the Saturday night with some various awards that are for things that people do for the club, not just for the cars, and recognising the role that people do within the club. And so as a part of that, we were helping set up with some of the stuff in the dining hall because Dad does the trophies and the awards. So we were there for that, setting up and pushing in the 2 vehicles that were going to be on display with our meal, before we then headed off to go get ourselves dressed and ready for the meal. I had a really fun dress with some kind of space pattern all over it, which I was pretty excited to pop on, and then headed back in to actually start enjoying the meal. And I believe there was about 120 people there, which is a fantastic turnout for the evening meal, because not everybody likes to go to it, and some people do only turn up for the Sunday of a national weekend for the big show and things on the Sunday. So 120 people to celebrate the 75th anniversary was brilliant. We had our meal, we had some very lovely speeches from various people, and then we had our guest speaker, which was Steve Waddingham, the Aston Martin historian, who came and gave a bit of information about what his job looks like, how he works to preserve heritage in the Aston Martins going forward, as well as helping people carrying out research on their historic vehicles that they are restoring and things like that. So a really interesting talk, and it was great to speak to Steve afterwards as well, because he'd spotted Peggy in the car park and recognised her from the Classics World spread that was done on her recently, thanks to her kind of distinctive wheels and seats. After all of the speeches and talks had been done, it was time for the awards, which I was very busy photographing, and my dad was very busy handing out, and my sister was very busy following people with the things that go with their trophy once they've collected it. And then people hung around afterwards, carried on chatting, kind of got up from the tables, have a good proper look at the cars that were on display. This year in the dining hall we had a 1.5 litre Le Mans that had been very carefully restored by some really well-known people within the club, and recently purchased by a guy up in Scotland who had bought it down for the weekend, and it looked absolutely stunning. And then we also had a very beautiful convertible Gazelle that had come all the way from the Netherlands, and there was actually a very large group of members from the Netherlands that had come across keen to be part of the 75th anniversary celebrations, and were tying it into having a much longer exploration and trip over in the UK with their vehicles. And this gazelle was absolutely beautiful, and a real credit to the owner, and also to the singer Mark, really. We eventually, I think, rolled out of the dining room, literally pushing the cars out about midnight, and then had to head off to bed to try and get some sleep before the big main day on the Sunday, which was this year being hosted at the Shuttleworth Collection. We had a fantastic spot right near where the planes were all taking off and going for flights, so we had beautiful aeroplanes flying over us all day, and we had a beautiful kind of horseshoe of cars all the way around, and a great turnout of vehicles, and some vehicles that I had not seen at a Singer Owners Club event either ever before or in a really long time. So it was really great to see so many people making the effort to come along for the 75th and showing off their beautiful vehicles. A car that really stood out to me was a 1912 10 horsepower that had been driven from Chelmsford, I think, and was very, very basic bodied in terms of it being done up for being a special at some point in its life, and was regularly used, again, according to the stickers, for various events that required scrutineering and hill climbs and things like that. But it was such a cool little vehicle, and so cool to see out at the show. So a real credit to the owners that had driven it there, and definitely caught my eye. Peggy, my sister's Hillman Imp, and various other cars that belonged to people who hadn't brought their singers along were made very welcome in the non-singer category, which does have a prize for it as well, which I think is a really nice touch. And enjoyed many, many hours looking around the cars. Again, with these things, I very rarely make it to look around the actual place that we're at, and this time was really no different. I think I made it over to the gift shop and things to go to the toilet, but that was about it. The rest of the time I spent out on the field taking photos, taking videos. So the day really did get away from me in that regard, and whilst I had a fantastic time, it was soon time for the awards, and my sister had come second in the non-singer class, and my dad's chamois had won the chamois class, and so my sister ended up driving her car around to collect the award for that, and I drove the chamois around to collect the award for that. But really cool doing the awards. I'm sure I've mentioned it before, but you vote other cars in your category unless the category is too small, in which case an independent person goes round from the club and makes a decision on that category. But it gives you kind of lots to look at. It gives you a bit of an engagement, an opportunity to talk to people who've got cars within the same category as you, to learn a little bit more about those that share some similarities with yours. Once it was all done and we started packing up, people gradually started heading off, and we'd had a really good time over the weekend. The six of us stopped off at a little pub that I knew nearby, thanks to all the other times that I've been to Shuttleworth, and had a meal before we all headed off home. And I was back in convoy with my parents along the A1. But yes, all in all, another fantastic weekend, and it was great to have such a brilliant turnout for the club at their 75th anniversary. They've done quite a few bits and pieces over the year to celebrate it, going back to where the club had its very first meeting. They've got various other events that they're going to highlight the fact that the club has been going for the 75th, and no doubt they'll have some fantastic stuff on their NEC stand in November, part of the celebrations again. But that was our singer weekend, and I'd love to hear, if you've been watching on the YouTube channel, if you spotted anything particularly interesting in the footage that I've put across, and if you'd like to hear any more about it, or if you are listening and you have got a favourite singer, then please let me know which singer you would love to add to your fleet. In the meantime, thank you ever so much for listening. Drive safely and happy motoring.